and welcome back. As I've been emphasising again and again, it's absolutely crucial that we think carefully and critically about how we portray ourselves online, no matter what media we use. I'm not necessarily the best example to follow, and you've probably worked that out by now from some of these videos. But in expanding your own online profile, you need to think carefully about what you're going to use, how you're going to use it, and just as importantly, why you're going to use it. For what purpose are you going to set up that blog? Will you sustain it with regular posts? Don't let it fall by the wayside. If you're going to create a Twitter profile, what following do you hope to attract? The messages you tweet on a daily or semi-regular basis will really determine who's interested in what you're saying. And it may well be that you will expand an audience, or you might lose some followers. And if you're going to use a profile picture, what's it going to say about you? And don't forget that that profile picture may be up there for a very, very long time. For example, if you go on a holiday with your sister and she puts her blonde hair extensions in your hair and takes a picture, do you want to really be disseminating that to anyone and everyone in the world? And it's really fantastic to see so many About Me profiles already being created, and make sure you post it onto Deacon Cloud, and if you like, ask for feedback from your peers. It's really useful to get that feedback. I showed my About Me profile to one of my seminars and someone wisely pointed out, why am I using the third person instead of the first person? And to fit more with the informal nature of that site, I changed it. Feedback is really useful. So do be sure to get involved with the digital media and share it. We'll be doing a bit of show and tell in seminars this week, and here's a few examples of what we've been doing already.
Hi, my name is Lara. I am one of the tutors for this unit, ALC 201. And as you can see from my About Me page, I am a part-time tutor at Deakin University in media comms and children's literature. I'm also doing a PhD, and I'm also a part-time musician. So I don't often sleep, but at times when I do, I dream about things that I would like to happen. I think Adam wants me to talk about how I designed this page, and I will start by saying I'm a trombonist, so I thought this would be an adequate reflection of something that isn't necessarily purely university-based, because I'm not totally university-based. And then I looked at Adam's profile and I saw that he had a very lovely headshot of him kind of sitting back like this, and I thought, I'm going to have a headshot of me so that they can recognize me. And I was tossing up between two images, and one was this one that I have used here, which is, I'm not going to talk about that. And the other image was me laughing my head off, having a fine old time, much more like my usual character, but I was wearing sparkly underpants on my head. And I had some friends over as I was setting this profile up, and I was like, oh look, I've got to do this for this uni thing, because Adam said I have to set up the profile. What should I use? And I said, I think this one's more me. And they're like, oh, the underpants is definitely more you, you're funny and all that sort of stuff. And I said, yeah. And they're like, great, well, hang on, what's this for? And I said, well, it's for university. And they're like, oh, will students see it? And I was like, well, yeah. They're like, oh, don't put that up. And I was like, why not? That would be quite fun, wouldn't it? They're like, no, you have to be professional. It's university and students will see you. And so I was like, oh, maybe this one. And they're like, yeah, that's more professional. Hang on. Should the background be like that? This is meant to be professional, isn't it? And I was like, no, not professional. Anyway, long, irritating story. But I chose this photo because it is a headshot of me, and at least students know who I am. And I thought underpants on the head, whilst it more reflective, more sums me up in a social content, it may not inspire confidence and authority. Hence, I don't know, it's a little bit geeky realism.
When I first logged onto About Me, I had absolutely no idea what it was about. So I sort of just made it very distant, thinking that if it was a professional site, then this would look acceptable. And if it was a friendly site, it would also give enough information for my friends to be able to find me. I had a few troubles. I went through, read all the instructions, but not as thoroughly as I probably should have. And then I had trouble with my computer crashing, and then I had to learn how to reuse it all.
So the problems that your method of troubleshooting was to actually look up, one, what people were doing on the site, but also looked at the instructions on the site itself?
Yeah, it took me through a tutorial when I first logged on, which I sort of skimmed through. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be able to figure this out myself. And then I had to go through and relook at And then I sort of didn't know what content to put in anyway, so I jumped onto the cloud and looked at other people's sites to see what they were doing.
The other thing I wanted to do in this lecture is to briefly look at the study materials that have been provided recently. Obviously you've got the standard study notes document which has got the readings listed for this week, and a summary for both on and off campus students of some of the key issues and concepts we'll be looking at this week. The other thing that I posted on Deakin Cloud, which I hope hasn't panicked anyone because it shouldn't, is a very long list of about 70 to 80 digital media applications that a research assistant and I compiled over the last few months. This is not something you need to look at in a great deal of detail. We don't expect you to look at anywhere near most of these. You will not have heard of many of them. I have not used most of them myself. But what we've got here, we've provided a very long list of free, often collaborative digital media applications that could be really useful in assessment coming up. And certainly if you want to explore beyond the mainstream, I suppose, if you like, Twitter, YouTube and so on, the digital applications we've looked at so far, do have a look at that list. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's been turned into a PDF, but the hyperlinks are all working there, so you can just click through, watch a demo video if you don't want to sign up for a profile, and give things a go. You might find there's very useful things in there for assessment. Speaking of which, perhaps the most important document for you at this point in time is the Module 1 exercise instructions document, which I uploaded recently along with a Module 1 exercise example document. If you didn't find out about these recently, remember that even though I'm only posting updates for the unit once or twice a week in the news items, if you follow me on Twitter you'll get immediate and much more frequent updates for these kinds of documents when they go up. So what your Module 1 exercise requires you to do is to construct two reflective texts using two different media. The media you've got to choose from is a blog, a HTML page which is very easily created within Deakin Cloud, a PowerPoint slideshow with notes, which many of you may have done before. So if you're tempted that way, perhaps even go further and try out the Prezi option or the infographic option if you can find something suitable for that. The example that I've provided in a separate document is of an infographic, and it really depends on what kind of approach, what topic or case study you choose within the identity and surveillance topics. You need one of each, which medium will really work for you. I've also provided details on demonstrating reading and research as part of the written component for these reflective texts. There's lots of information there, and also really importantly, how to use images correctly. I asked in my 5 seminars last week who knew what Creative Commons was, and I didn't have anyone who really knew what it was. A few people had heard of it. What's really important is that you cannot just simply grab images from Google Images and use them willy-nilly. You need to reference them correctly, and you need to make sure that you are able to use them. What I'm encouraging you to do in this unit is to actually produce your own images. As you've seen in the study notes, I've constantly been taking my own photographs or using images from Creative Commons. So think of those as your two options. What would really be a really fantastic way for you to demonstrate extra creativity is to use your own images and essentially create digital media within your digital media, whether it be your blog post or your infographic and so on. The other thing you need to look into is look at some of the links I provided for Creative Commons. If you've never heard of it before, you'll really learn a lot in a very short period of time. You can also see that how I've referenced the images from Creative Commons is the way that we'd prefer you to reference it in this class. There's no one right way to reference images from Creative Commons. The Creative Commons website has its best practice, although that doesn't allow us as markers to click through and make sure you've used the specific images correctly. So reference it how I've done it in the study notes. And of course, let us know if you've got any questions on Deakin Cloud by email or in class. This gives a lot of detail. Hopefully it will answer most, if not all of your questions, but nonetheless, do get in touch if you have any questions. The last thing I wanted to emphasize in relation to this assessment, I know you've heard this many times in different units and it probably becomes very tiresome. Don't leave things until the last minute. The usual reasons for not doing this apply here as well. The things that are left until the last minute look rushed and you don't do as well. But there are also two very good reasons not to leave things until the last minute here. Firstly, you will soon be organised into groups for your online digital collaborative media project. It will be difficult if you're only still starting the Module 1 exercise to be fully collaborating with your peers, and you need to do other assessment as time goes on. Secondly, you may be using digital media that's outside the bounds of the Deakin system. You may be vulnerable to technical issues that might arise at the last minute. Therefore, you don't want to be working on something at the last minute. In fairness to all students, we do have to deduct marks for lateness, so please do keep that in mind. So that's about it from me for now. Be sure to join the conversation on Twitter and Deakin Cloud, which has already started. I'd also love to see some discussion going in the YouTube discussion forum underneath these videos. You don't have to post comments that are necessarily about the videos, I'm not asking for that, but what would be great is if you would get an experience of having a discussion outside Deakin Cloud, and I really hope that we've got over 200 students enrolled in this unit now, that will get a lot of discussion going in different forums, and if that's the case, we don't want any one forum being too cluttered. So get involved, give things a go, it'll only take a few minutes. What I'd like to leave you with here is an observation I recorded from a recent lecture given by Matthew Allen, a professor in Internet Studies and the current head of school for the School of Communication and Creative Arts at Deakin. He's technically my boss, although I'm not using this just to suck up. This is a very useful way of summing up the topic for this week on identity. Matthew Allen noted that we now depend on technologically mediated social connectivity that, through digital technologies and widespread access to networks, reshapes what and how we live our lives, precisely because it is not something we use, but is part of what and who we are. That's something worth reflecting on as we move through this unit. Ciao. And you were also saying before, Mel, that the iPad is the official device of your school, whereas the mobile phone also permeates.
I'm sorry.
It's gonna be late night, dude.
That didn't last very long.
Another thing we did was explore and critique the Media Studies 2.0 approach, and we reflected. Oh, it's alright, come here. It's okay.
Okay, right, we're back.
See, this is gonna have to have an outtakes too. This can go for 20
This is much more fun than preparing my classes for tomorrow.